I'd like to welcome you to the 2007 Awards Luncheon for the Mandel Center for Nonprofit Organizations. I want to thank you for being here. My name is Greg Eastwood. I'm the interim president at Case Western Reserve University. I have been doing this job for a year and a few days, and I look forward to, as you do, welcoming Barbara Snyder on July 1 as the permanent president of Case Western Reserve University. Barbara is looking forward to that too. You know, Barbara is the provost at Ohio State University. She's bringing a lot of her talents. She's not bringing the football team to Case Western Reserve, but I'd like to take this opportunity to stress the importance of the many partnerships between Case Western Reserve University and the greater Cleveland community. The faculty, the students, the administration of the Mandel Center play an important leadership role in developing and sustaining community partnerships and helping the university fulfill its mission. I believe that the university, this may be contrary to what you have thought, but we believe at Case Western Reserve University that the university is here to serve the community, and that community certainly is the community of Cleveland, Northeast Ohio. In some cases, it's the community of the country and of the world. Notice, by the way, I'm saying Case Western Reserve University. If you have been following this saga, you will know that we have a new word mark. Actually, it's the one we've had for 180 years. Well, actually, for 40 years, Case Western Reserve University, and a brand new logo that recognizes our rich heritage. I'd like to recognize Commissioner Peter Lawson Jones. Would you just stand, Commissioner Jones, we recognize you. And also Judge Anthony Calabrese Jr., whom I met earlier. And also everyone in the room who supports the nonprofit sector and supports this community. I appreciate that. And I also in advance want to congratulate this year's awards winners who are exemplary of the vital work of our nonprofit community. Whenever I have the opportunity to congratulate award winners, I take the additional opportunity to remind you who are award winners that you represent many other people who are not getting awards. You, of course, are at the peak and at the top of that pyramid, so to speak, but there are many other people who deserve recognition as well. So finally, I'd like to turn the podium over now to Susan Lajoie Egan, who is the Executive Director of the Mandel Center. Please welcome Susan.
Thank you, President Eastwood, and good afternoon to all of you. It is truly wonderful to see such a sizable number of people here to honor the best work of our nonprofit sector in Greater Cleveland. I would like to encourage you to please enjoy your lunch as I'm talking here for a few minutes about the center. For over 20 years, the Mandel Center has been an innovator in nonprofit education. We have set the standard and are proud of our now over 700 alumni who are engaged in proactive leadership roles in the nonprofit community, locally, nationally, and internationally. The future will be even more exciting as the Mandel Center faculty, staff, and students look forward to being housed in a first-class, innovative facility due to open in August that will sustain and grow our tradition of building excellent nonprofit leaders, as well as our growing commitment to community service and research on behalf of nonprofit professionals everywhere. We are profoundly grateful to the Mandel family for their generous gift which has made this new building possible. I would also like to thank and acknowledge the leaders of Case Western Reserve University for their key role in making the building possible, and for more than 2 decades of steadfast support for the center's work. The partnership between the university, business, philanthropic, and nonprofit communities has enabled the Mandel Center to develop one of the top 10 graduate programs in nonprofit management in the nation. This luncheon is a particularly special occasion for the center, as it provides an occasion to honor what is central to our mission: excellence in nonprofit leadership. This ceremony was inaugurated by 2 of our graduates in 1995 and currently is co-sponsored both by the center and our Alumni Association. The Leadership in Nonprofit Management Award was instituted to recognize the achievements of nonprofit leaders in the greater Cleveland area. As a community, we can be proud of their many accomplishments and the standards of excellence that our award winners have set. We have a number of previous award winners in the room, and I would like to invite them to stand and receive our acknowledgement. Last year, our selection committee added a new category of awards, the Organization Innovation Award, to recognize the achievements of an organization that has demonstrated an ability to use resources in innovative ways to achieve its mission. Both awards are made possible through the thoughtful work of a selection committee, which is comprised of local nonprofit leaders. This year's committee was chaired by David Abbott, Executive Director of the George Gund Foundation. David's contributions to our community are both exceptional and numerous. His talent, vision, and sustained commitment to Greater Cleveland are widely recognized and deeply valued. We are fortunate that our committee is comprised of many, many exceptional individuals, and I would like to ask all of them to please stand and also receive our acknowledgement and thanks. This year, the center inaugurated some new ways to support the awards luncheon and to further recognize the leaders and organizations that are working every day to make our community a better place. As you are enjoying your lunch, please take time to view the slides, which will begin momentarily on the screen on my left, which includes a recognition of the special supporters of this event, as well as our award recipients. I'd like to invite you to continue to enjoy your lunch, and our program will begin in a few minutes. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dave Abbott. As Susan said, it was my privilege to chair the selection committee for this year's awards. I do want to say that you should just keep right on eating. This does not mean that the food is going to be whisked away from your table. Just continue eating. Ignore me. I'll pretend I'm talking to my children. So it has been my pleasure to work with an extraordinary group on the selection committee, and Susan already introduced them, but I want to add my thanks to the work that they did. They really put in a lot of time and effort to this process, and I think it's really a great group, and I'm sure this year's winners think they're pretty smart folks too. But it's been my pleasure, and I want to thank them. My task at the moment is to introduce our speaker for today, and I'm happy to do that. Rip Rapson is our guest, as you know, and he is the president and CEO of the Kresge Foundation, a $3 billion national foundation based outside of Detroit that seeks to strengthen communities by strengthening nonprofits. And Rip has been in that job for just under a year now. And I should point out, by the way, that his appearance here today comes by way of a payoff of a lost wager over the Cavs-Pistons series. And Rip, it's no reflection on you, Rip. We were actually offered the entire city of Ann Arbor, but we said, no, we'd rather have Rip come and talk to us. So thanks for being with us. Before Rip took the position at Kresge, he had an extensive career in Minneapolis, including 6 years as the head of the McKnight Foundation, where he led a number of efforts in a wide range of important undertakings, ranging from regional economic development and growth to prioritizing the early education of children. And under his leadership, McKnight was given the inaugural Paul Ilvasacker Award for Effective Public Policy Engagement by the Council on Foundations in 2002. And before he embarked on the philanthropy career, Rip also held a number of interesting positions, including a senior fellow at the University of Minnesota, deputy mayor of Minneapolis, a practicing lawyer, and a legislative assistant to a member of Congress. But with the possible exception of that Ilvasacker Award, I really don't think that these signposts along the way of his biography really communicate the degree of thoughtfulness and sense of purpose that Rip brings to his work. He is really extremely well regarded within the philanthropy world for the thoughtfulness and the care that he brings to the philanthropic endeavors that he has been engaged in for the last 7 years. And he is widely known among foundations for the way he seeks to build connections among foundations and nonprofits and the larger world that we all work in. He is a leader in both thought and action in our field, and his keen insights into the vital role that foundations and nonprofits play in addressing the issues that we face make him a perfect choice both to lead the Kresge Foundation and to speak to us today. So it's my pleasure to bring up Rip Rapson.
I just wanted to thank David for such a kind introduction. The problem with being introduced in such nice terms is that you then spend the next 25 minutes talking and people can make their own judgments, so I worry a little bit about that. I also worry a little bit about this Cleveland-Detroit thing you guys got going. I got to tell you that Cleveland really has been on my mind these last couple of years. I mean, you turn on the TV and you see this guy named Kucinich. I think he's from around here somewhere. You can't quite get away from him. You've got LeBron James. I don't know what that was about. That was one of the most extraordinary individual performances I've ever watched. And from a guy from Minnesota, the really important thing is that the Twins are in third place. I can't believe that Cleveland is in first place in the, yeah. Well, enough sports stuff. The real reason I came to Cleveland is twofold. One is I think this is just a terrific city, and I'm sure that everyone who comes here says that to you. But having sort of a particular interest in the plight of older Midwestern cities, I just think this town is doing so many things right. I know you're struggling. But as I look at the work that Dave is doing at Gunn and Ron Richard at Cleveland Foundation and other people in this room, it is truly extraordinary, I think, what you're doing with this town, and I, for one, really look forward to seeing the results. And second, and most importantly, I have the world's best board member who happens to be a Cleveland native. Bob Story sits on our board at the Kresge Foundation. And if you were to write a job description for what an ideal board member ought to be in terms of grace, dignity, thoughtfulness, compassion for the issues you care about, it would be Bob. He is a great ambassador for your town and great for our field. Let me just say, in the back, there we go. That's what's happening. Did I do something? Oh, yeah, I was just going to ask the back if I could be heard. Now I can step away from the microphone. Thank you. Did the back hear any of the last 5 minutes of what I've just said? Let me start again. Thank you, Dave. Yikes. It is really, though, an honor to be associated with such a remarkable institution. And Mort Mandel's vision some 20 years ago to invest in the long-term cultivation of nonprofit leadership is really remarkable in its simplicity and its profundity, it seems to me. How he possibly could have known how critically important that vision would be in today's environment of such varied and enormous challenge is beyond me, but he did, and I'm delighted to be a part of an institution that honors that vision. And it's also a pleasure to share a program with the two extraordinary organizations you're going to honor in just a moment. My congratulations to Stephen and the Menorah Park Center for Senior Living, although I had no idea that like 3/4 of this audience is Menorah Park. You guys are impressive. Whoever does your community organizing, I need to talk to after we leave. And also to Holly Harland and Entrepreneurs for Sustainability. As I've read your press and the descriptions of your work, it is profoundly creative, important, and inspirational. But I wanted to use my time this afternoon to suggest something a little bit different, I think, from what I had initially intended. As I thought about the people in this room and the various sectors involved in making a place great, as you are working so hard to do in Cleveland, I thought it would be useful to think about a little bit different role that private, large philanthropy such as mine need to play at a time when our society is making, or in some cases not making, decisions that are going to reverberate well into the lives of our grandchildren. Because as the pace of change in the world accelerates, as the effects of globalism, immigration, economic restructuring, terrorism, climate change, you name it, ricochet with unprecedented complexity throughout our society, the need for new organizational linkages, particularly among the sectors, becomes increasingly acute. The challenges are simply too complex and multifaceted for one sector or another to take on by itself. And yet, rather than consciously and proactively calculating how to play off the strengths of one another to take on these big and dangerous challenges, each of the sectors instead inclines toward its own splendid isolation. And philanthropy, I fear, may be the worst violator of all. So I want to suggest a model for approaching these matters a bit differently. I'll gather my remarks into 3 parts. First, a description of 4 qualities of philanthropy that create the potential for a far more strategic approach. Second, a look at how this might play out in the realm of metropolitan growth and development, and I'll explain why I've chosen that field. And third, just a few concluding observations. The great educator and philanthropoid Paul Ilvasacker once characterized foundations as society's passing gear, organizations uniquely suited to propel society beyond its fixed and safe positions toward enduring long-term social change. Both the foundations I've headed, McKnight and Kresge, have wrestled with the tension zone between grant-making that is primarily responsive charity and activities that aspire to be more strategic. Both institutions, together with the field of philanthropy generally, have come to recognize that purely charitable grant-making can only go so far in changing the fundamental social and political dynamics that shape our citizens' day-to-day quality of life and their long-term trajectories of opportunity. One has no choice, I would submit, but to step onto the larger stage of public policy, civic relationships, and economic systems in order to shatter calcified patterns of injustice. And yet, working in this way is still the exception among private foundations, and it shouldn't be. 4 reasons come to mind. First, private philanthropy has the ability to view things whole. You know, it's so easy to become focused on a particular grant or an immediate need that we sometimes forget the enormous privilege accorded philanthropy to take holistic, long-term view of things, to stitch together threads that often seem distinct and unrelated. And because our assets secure our survival, we can cultivate the kind of patient intelligence that permits us to go deeply into an issue over a long period of time, chipping away at seemingly intractable challenges, making a difference in ways large and small. This quality creates a particularly close affinity between philanthropy and the academic sector. Private foundations in the early 20th century cut their teeth on research, supporting scientific and academic inquiry that pioneered new ways of thinking, generated new institutions, and raised novel questions. Although a number of foundations have kept that tradition alive, private philanthropy needs to recommit itself to the value of creating and disseminating the kind of knowledge that bears on our deepest problems. Foundations are, after all, uniquely suited to encourage the kind of research that can explore the bold and the profound, the unconventional and the unpopular, the kind that can pay dividends far beyond the life cycle of a grant period or even beyond a grant's subject matter. And foundations can invest in academic pursuits that contribute to balanced, tolerant, and informed democratic discourse, serving as a partial antidote to the civic climate that too frequently substitutes brittle and unyielding ideologies for flexible and complex critical thought. The second reason private philanthropy can play this more strategic role is its freedom to take risks. It's helpful to bear in mind that many private foundations were created by founders taking the kind of high business risk that could leverage spectacular returns over the long term. Private philanthropy, free as we are from re-election cycles, quarterly profit reports, and appropriations from others, has the independence to take chances of a similar kind. Not just the modest risk entailed in individual grants, but the larger bets that promise true innovation and transformation. Philanthropy acting as society's social venture capital. But unlike the private sector, philanthropy applies the quality of risk with a social compass. Foundations invest where private markets will not, building housing in impoverished urban neighborhoods, underwriting efforts such as social compact that compile consumer data, demonstrating that robust spending and viable markets exist in those very places that national commercial chains have relegated to convenience store economies. And where private markets are transactional, bringing individuals and organizations together at the moment their economic self-interest coincides, but not beyond that moment, it falls to philanthropy, together with the public and the nonprofit sectors, to forge more enduring social, moral, and emotional bonds. The third quality of philanthropy that permits it to be more strategic is its flexibility to employ a wide range of tools. You know, at root, we in philanthropy make grants. Heaven forbid that wouldn't be the case. But we can put our institutional equity on the line in any number of other ways as well. We can convene people as a way of forging relationships, promoting joint inquiry, and fostering concerted action. We can pursue strategic communications to strengthen public understanding of and engagement in the work of grantees. We can invest directly in social enterprise through program-related investments, loan guarantees, or any number of other forms of financial leverage. Now, the public sector possesses a similar set of tools. Unfortunately, however, it is using them less often and less creatively, both a cause and a consequence of growing public distrust of and disaffection from government. Foundations cannot substitute for government, even though we're often asked to do that. It's not just a matter of inadequate financial resources. We simply cannot do without an able, committed government sector that sets priorities through informed public spending, that forms equitable and reasoned public policy, and that serves as the steward of respectful and responsive public institutions. But when this basic calculus falls apart, as it seemingly has, philanthropy should not sidestep the moment. That's why foundations of every size and kind are supplementing their more traditional grant-making with public information campaigns, strategic issue research, the formation of novel financial intermediaries, and many other tools. The fourth and final reason that philanthropy can play this more strategic role is its historical commitment to investing in underrepresented people and causes. Although philanthropy joins with others in promoting society's full spectrum of worthwhile activities, its support assumes particular importance for organizations that serve as our society's moral thermostats, flipping into the on position in the presence of suffering, injustice, or callous behavior. This convergence of the missions of foundations and nonprofits has led many to view them as a single sector, the so-called independent sector. But the similarities should not obscure the differences. Certainly the most basic of these is the reality, and one that we in philanthropy shouldn't forget for a moment, that nonprofits work daily on the front lines, often against impossible odds. In that basic sense, nonprofits enable the work of foundations. Foundations accordingly have a special obligation to chip away at the massive challenges that nonprofits face, evaporating government funding, intensifying pressures toward privatization, and many, many others. A good place to start would be for foundations to invest in nonprofit efforts to go to scale. The incredible work that Menorah Park and Entrepreneurs for Sustainability are doing is, I would argue, characteristic of the national nonprofit landscape. But how many times have we seen grants that would permit nonprofit organizations to extend these clear economic and social benefits to an ever-expanding number of people or adapt them to different settings? Far too few. Foundations need to invest in what is working to help it stabilize and expand. A second modest step would be for philanthropy to assist in opening new channels of nonprofit capitalization. At Kresge, just to take one example, we have long assumed that providing a challenge grant to increase individual giving to a nonprofit's capital campaign is the best way to promote an organization's capacity. Sometimes, many times, that's true, but sometimes, many times, it is not. We are starting along a path that calls on us to look as hard at other forms of capitalization as we will at the role of a building project, creating thoughtful long-term business plans, developing working capital reserves to bridge through times of tight cash flow or to permit the exploration of new ideas, exploring innovative financing instruments that tap traditionally inaccessible forms of capital investment. So, there's the model. Philanthropy applying its unique institutional assets to prod, catalyze, supplement, and otherwise help each of the other sectors take on society's large issues. Now, I got to tell you, a friend of mine warned me that at this point, many of you would be sort of nodding politely and in your seats, but really remain skeptical that this is the role that many, if any, foundations actually are prepared to play. You know, we're too independent, we're too unsystematic, we're too reluctant to attack root causes, any number of other reasons. But I want to test the proposition in the here and now example of regional sprawl and urban disinvestment. You could choose any number of examples to test this out with, but my good friend Ed Skloot at the Surdna Foundation suggested to me why this is a good place to focus. He wrote, "It is a question of addressing the principle of common responsibility for common assets, the natural inbuilt environment, the fabric of integrated communities, the economic and cultural wealth of cities. Seen in that light, smart growth is not just another social cause among many. It is instead a fundamental exercise in wise civic stewardship." Ed is right, of course, but in place after place across the country, we're not getting it right. Middle-class residents continue their flight to outer-ring suburban communities, concentrating poverty and exacerbating disinvestment in our core cities and our older suburbs. Traffic congestion is increasing, generating thousands of hours of lost productivity, countless tons of carbon emissions, and incalculable incidents of road rage and general crabbiness. Open space is being consumed insatiably, imperiling some of our most treasured natural areas and farmlands, and on and on. We concluded in McKnight, and I think we're on the edge of concluding at Kresge, that the only way to address these broad dynamics was to use the 4 philanthropic qualities I've discussed to leverage the other sectors into the game in a different way. So let me be specific. First, foundations need to invest in applied research from the academic sector to clarify existing conditions and to crystallize the case for change. You can't tame it if you can't frame it. Given the extraordinarily complex set of interrelated challenges that impede equitable regional growth, it's not at all self-evident where you would start. Land conservation, urban housing, the possibilities are endless. Uncompromising research and analysis is indispensable to get going. A national coalition of foundations has, for example, invested in research by the Brookings Institution about the possible paths of resuscitation for older industrial cities, working-class towns like Cleveland, Detroit, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia. This project conveys to state and municipal leaders the message that the unique cultural, physical, historic, and economic assets of these cities furnish a lever for regional health. And it suggests in very concrete terms how to assemble the right policies, strategic investments, and implementation vehicles to take advantage of those assets. Second, foundations can serve a catalytic role in drawing together private sector leadership coalitions focused on removing barriers to the region's economic competitiveness. Responding to the business community's concerns that the Twin Cities region was becoming complacent about its ability to compete with other metropolitan areas, McKnight brought together the CEOs of the region's 36 largest employers, together with the mayors of Minneapolis and St. Paul, the governor, and the president of the University of Minnesota, to create something called the Itasca Project. It's now in its 5th year. A number of things are noteworthy about Itasca. To start with, it was a civic agenda, not simply a business agenda. 3 of the 6 topics on which Itasca focused, early childhood development, transportation reform, and regional economic disparities, drove the government affairs representatives of these companies absolutely crazy because they fell outside the fence line of the state's traditional low-tax, minimal regulation business agenda. But the CEOs, to their enormous credit, took the broader view and stuck to it. Second, Itasca was staffed largely by the nonprofit sector. McKnight funded McKinsey to do the glue work, kind of the core coordination. But the 3 topics I just mentioned were all staffed by nonprofits, which also drove the governmental affairs people absolutely crazy. The CEOs were surprised and impressed that these organizations could bring such sophistication and professionalism to the task. It was an invaluable exercise in bridge building. And third, the impact of Itasca has been dramatic. It helped develop and secure passage of a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar legislative commitment to improve the state's transportation system. It launched a highly visible public information campaign to call public and business attention to the growing economic disparities between the region's majority white population and its communities of color. It threw its weight behind an early education legislative agenda. So returning to the third leg of the regional table, foundations can partner with the government sector to develop the kind of long-term investment frameworks that draw capital back to the inner city and moderate growth at the region's edge. The public sector is notoriously poor at figuring out how to best use the leverage of foundations, looking most often to enlist help for very small bore in-the-moment crises. And foundations aren't so hot at figuring out how to tangle with the government sector either, tending to view the municipal political arena as some sort of elaborately disguised version of the World Wrestling Federation's SmackDown. You know, actually, as I think about it, coming from Minnesota and Governor Ventura, they may have a point. Nevertheless, both sides need to develop a new set of dance steps. A couple of examples. At McKnight, we underwrote a path-breaking, citizen-based regional visioning process that the Metropolitan Council, our governing body, desperately wanted, but for which it couldn't justify using public money. That process became the blueprint for the region's long-term infrastructure investment strategy and is in place today. The Cleveland and the Gunn Foundations have invested in a first-of-its-kind fund that is committed, in close coordination with elected officials, to searching out the leverage points for northeastern Ohio's future economic growth, and it's a very exciting, possibility-rich activity. Kresge and the Detroit Foundation community have begun a conversation with Mayor Kilpatrick about how to align foundation resources with redesigned services from the public sector in a half-dozen neighborhoods in an effort to demonstrate that it is indeed possible to rebuild the confidence of residents and investors alike in some of the most distressed real estate in North America. And fourth and finally, foundations can invest in the nonprofit sector's ability to advocate for stronger, more equitable regional service systems. A regional growth agenda can all too easily focus exclusively on some variation of a high road economy based on nanotechnology, biomedical devices, photovoltaics, you name it. Now, that knowledge-driven economy is absolutely, without question, a crucial gateway to 21st century competitiveness. But when all is said and done, it risks bypassing many of America's working poor, those 90 million Americans, almost 1 in 3, earning less than $40,000 a year. As I noted earlier, nonprofits are an important moral circuit breaker in exactly those circumstances. First, they provide the essential supports for people of color, immigrants, and peoples of diverse religions and cultures to join the regional economic mainstream through entrepreneurial assistance, workforce training, homeownership programs, financial literacy, childcare, and so on. Second, the breadth of nonprofit activity mitigates the strong impulse to relegate the arts, the environment, and human services to the margins of a regional economic development agenda. The challenge here is for nonprofits to develop the ability and the will to navigate the often distasteful and invariably messy realm of public policy, both to educate policymakers about the implications of their decisions and to take before the public a set of beliefs and activities rooted in an old-fashioned American value of the common good. And third, nonprofits' ability to give public voice to their collective missions centers a region's attention on the need to make systematic and sustained progress in reducing educational, economic, and political disparities. In the Itasca Project, for example, it was the nonprofits who helped the business community understand that reducing disparities will contribute to a more competitive workforce, our region's most important asset and the strongest driver of future economic growth. My experience with regional growth suggests, therefore, that philanthropy can indeed draw each of the sectors into a different relationship to the whole, furnishing the lift that no other sector can supply, providing the kind of catalytic investments that truly alter the region's basic chemistry. So let me conclude with just a thought about what all this might mean going forward. There's an old Asian saying, everything rests on the tip of intention. It implies a very close relationship between outcome and motivation. I've always thought that this applies not only to individuals, but to institutions as well. In the world of public service, all of our institutional values and principles grow directly out of our fundamental intention to help others, especially those who are less fortunate. We shift and adjust, we expand and we contract, we assess and we respond, but we always keep our original intention in clear view, spurring our dreams of new and better ways to serve. But intentions are not enough. They must be accompanied by purposeful, strategic, collective action. And our recent track record on that score is not very good, either locally or nationally. That is simply no longer acceptable. The key, of course, is leadership. At all sectors, in all times, to be sure. But to be truly effective, it needs to be focused, interdisciplinary, and timed to make the difference. And there's the rub. The academic sector, despite its many virtues, is ill-equipped to lead. The private sector is immobilized by bottom-line pressures. The public sector is paralyzed by ideological rigidity and a penchant for electorally self-serving gesture politics. The nonprofit sector can innovate and respond, but it has its hands full just keeping the lights on. So it falls, at least in my book, to philanthropy to get things started. But don't wait for us to show some signs of life. Get to know the foundations in your community. Understand what they do, who they are, and where they're headed. We in philanthropy may not stand for election, but we're not immune to carefully orchestrated, thoughtful pressure. So use your talents, your influence, and your passions to shine a light on us. Push, cajole, suggest, insist. We need all the help we can get. Thank you very much. Oh, that's yours. Oh, wait. let me take your speech.
Yeah.
You try working without the microphone for a while.
It'd probably be better off.
Sorry.
Those are Susan's.
Those are Susan's. This is mine. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rip. Those very thoughtful remarks, I think, will certainly inspire those of us in the philanthropic community, and I know that it will give those of you in the nonprofit world an additional insight into our side of the table. And Rip wanted me to let you know that he will be handing out application forms in the lobby at the end of the ceremony. Ron Richards laughing, but he'll be doing it too. Well, it's now our privilege to make the award presentations today, the reason why we are all here. And first is the Award for Leadership in Nonprofit Management, which is presented annually to an individual who's demonstrated a record of visionary leadership, creative efforts to address issues, and commitments to the principle of good management. As the awards committee reviewed the many outstanding applications, and believe me, there were many, we were particularly struck by an absolutely breathtaking array of innovations that Stephen Rachelson has introduced in his 20 years as executive director at the Menora Park Center for Senior Living. So when we caught our breath, we very enthusiastically voted to make Steve this year's award winner. And by marrying Menora Park's mission to highly effective business practices and an absolutely incredible sense of social entrepreneurship, Steve has led it to become the largest agency serving the elderly in Northeast Ohio. When he began in 1987, Menora Park consisted of a 356-bed skilled nursing home and a 206-suite independent living facility, both with very long waiting lists. Today, Menora Park serves between 8,000 and 10,000 people annually, with an unmatched range of services and programs, with a budget of over $60 million and 1,100 staff members. Steve has created a host of ventures ranging from a senior citizens home repair services and home cleaning services, and many others to help generate income to offset the loss in public funding that has jeopardized and in some cases put out of business less creative, less entrepreneurial, less nimble organizations. He has led an impressive expansion of Menora Park's physical facilities, including the addition of aquatic center, and not least of all, he has been an active participant in the public policy debates where a nonprofit voice is so vital. And so there's much more that could be said, but we want to hear a few words from Steve. And so Steve, on behalf of the Mandel Center, it's my real honor to present to you the Award for Leadership in Nonprofit Management.
Hi, Ron. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so very much for that standing ovation. I never had one of those before. Well, I'd like to thank the members of the Mandel Selection Committee, of course, those who submitted my nomination, and everyone here this afternoon to share this special day with me. By coincidence, the year 2007 marks my 20th anniversary at Menora Park, so thanks for a great anniversary present also. I've been in the nonprofit management field now for 31 years, and I've seen dramatic change. In hospital administration graduate school in the 70s, when Medicare and Medicaid funds literally gushed out of Washington into our very arms, we learned how to deliver creative programs, how to build a government very effectively, and how easy it was to simply break even. In the mid-'80s, all that changed. The government realized that they could not fund President Johnson's ideas for a great society, and reimbursement suddenly decreased. Break-even management, which was the norm and goal of many nonprofit executives, didn't work any longer. We never accumulated sufficient cash reserves,
and suddenly I had no cash to pay my payroll taxes. And we know how high the penalties can be when you don't pay your payroll taxes. After much cash flow, pain, and suffering, I started to realize that the more traditional ways of operating a nonprofit business didn't work when funds became severely restricted and evaporated, especially from the government. I gradually adopted a for-profit management mentality. My new goals were and are to adopt modern management techniques from the for-profit field and use those to accomplish our glorious nonprofit missions. A nonprofit mission statement doesn't really mean that profit or surplus are dirty words. Today's nonprofit manager must generate excess cash flow, diversify, to fund those programs that you know are never going to be cost effective. We should be just as aggressive, competitive, territorial, flexible, and tough as the corporate execs read about every day in the Wall Street Journal. But how fortunate I am to work in a world in which my mission, my product, is not to produce a great earnings per share report quarterly or to prepare Menor Park for a buyout. My product is George Adler, table 4, a Menor Park resident and friend who's here with us this afternoon. Holocaust survivor from Hungary, passenger in a ship called the Exodus in 1948, fighter in Israel's war for independence. He came to us because he needed assistance finally with his physical needs and needed a good quality of life. So our product, the focus of our for-profit techniques, is to care for hundreds of people like George, and how fulfilling my career has been as a result. I truly love my job. And as you can see from everyone here from Menor Park, they truly love their mission also. Now, if I'm successful as a manager, it's due in large part to the wonderful teams of individuals I've lived and worked with for over 30 years. My team at home, table 2, is directed by my wonderful wife and best friend, Lori, our 3 great sons, one of whom Adam's here today, and my mother, who proudly lives at Menor Park. Their warmth, love, humor, and constant energy make it so easy to leave work behind as soon as I pull into our Solon driveway. And where would I be without the team of Menor Park executive and professional staff, table 4, who share a joint vision of customer service, cutting-edge programming, revenue enhancement, and assuring that our 1,200 staff members are treated with dignity, respect, and of course, great job security. I've also had the good fortune to work with the best of Cleveland civic leaders in their roles as Menor Park board presidents. Now, if I was in the for-profit sector, what I learned from their collective coaching and business acumen and overall wisdom would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in consulting fees, and I got it all for free. So I'm truly indebted to my consultants, Bob Dietz, Mort Frankel, Ed Singer, Phil Wasserstrom, Nate Oscar, Keith Libman, Harvey Sholnick, Enid Rosenberg, and the late Harry Steiger, who was truly a special guy, for making me a much better person as well as a more effective and sophisticated leader. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. It's a pleasure having you and your whole team here with us today. Our second award is the annual presentation of the Organization Innovation Award to an organization that has demonstrated inventiveness, expansion beyond traditional boundaries, and a culture of innovation. This year's winner is Entrepreneurs for Sustainability, otherwise known as E4S. And E4S is really a wonderful testament to the fact that even a small organization can be powerful if it knows how to collaborate with others. In fact, E4S lives by a model and a motto that goes connect, learn, do. as it enlists a rapidly growing network of participants in its thoughtful and provocative programs on sustainable business practices. It connects organizations and individuals with something in common. It helps them learn how all of us can help to meet today's challenges while honoring future generations' rights to having a similar or better quality of life than we have today. And it sets them on the path of doing, of taking action, the kind of things that all individuals and organizations can take in order to confront the crisis that we face in climate change, in social equity, and in the development that is truly sustainable. You know, it's especially fitting, I think, that we're making the presentation to E4S today in this location, because outside those windows runs the Cuyahoga River, which, as we know, is an international symbol of unsustainable development and the kind of damage that it can do to the environment. And some might find it ironic that Holly Harlan had the vision to tackle the notion of sustainability in this place. But E4S is fond of challenging its participants to create a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And the notion of building a sustainable economy in this location is exactly what Northeast Ohio needs. And it's ultimately what so impressed our selection committee and why it is our privilege to present to Entrepreneurs for Sustainability the Organization Innovation Award. Holly Harlan, the founder and president.
Wow. What an honor. I speak in front of lots of people, but not terribly this many. And this is such an honor for a small startup from the grassroots, and I'm a little choked up. First, I wanted to thank Mike Duncan. He's the chairman, current chairman at E4S, and the VP of sales from BIE. He wrote the nomination for E4S and knows us very well. And then I want to, of course, thank the selection committee for the Mandel selection committee for honoring E4S and E4S and all of its collaborators. When you honor E4S, you honor a whole network of people. We've attracted 4,000 people in Northeast Ohio to sustainability. And yesterday, I was in a conversation with a gentleman in California who's looking to invest venture capital funds in Northeast Ohio. And he read about E4S, and he believes that E4S in the nation is the only organization working with businesses in a strategic way to help them implement sustainability. And he thinks that this is a good place to invest capital in clean technologies because E4S has created that community, that culture of sustainability here in this region. And we didn't do it alone. E4S is all about collaboration. Sustainability really is about collaboration. Sustainability really is about the intersection of ideas around the environment, the economy, and social good. And together, if you hold those three ideas and those three values at a high enough level, you come up with ideas that are greater than anything that we can hold by ourselves. But innovation starts with collaboration. And for me, it started at WireNet. It's a small nonprofit on the west side of town focusing on manufacturing. My background is manufacturing. And I came to John Coleman and asked him if I could study something called natural capitalism, and he said, go for it. And I did, and I brought it back to Cleveland. And I also started by talking to the people that were already in the environmental field because I wasn't there. Innovation happens at the intersection. I was in manufacturing, not in the environment, and didn't know much about the environment. So I talked to Amanda Gillespie and Sadhu Johnston, who now have left Cleveland and now head up the environmental programs for the city of Chicago. I talked to David Beach at EcoCity Cleveland and Scott Sanders at Earth Day Coalition, Brad Massey at the New Agrarian Center, and Lisa Hong, who was starting up groups around energy, and also Amanda Rhodes at Green Energy Ohio, and Ryan McKenzie, who worked in transportation. And I found a rich group of people that were working on sustainability, but they didn't have the business component yet. So I decided, along with my friends, my founders of E4S, Peter Cordy from Talon Products, Grant Marquardt from, at that time, EDI, and now from Executive Edge, Brian Schneiderman, at that time from Shore Bank, and now who lives in North Carolina. Together, we worked on setting up E4S. And now we've been joined on that board by Bill Doty from Doty and Miller Architects, and Bill Odie from Odie Company, Chris Warren from Shore Bank Enterprise Group, Mike Dungan, as I said, from BIE, Barb Shank, who was from Mustard Seed and now has flown the coop, and she works at for Wild Oats, yes. Leslie Yerkes, who's a consultant, and Nan McIntyre, she's working at Shore Bank. John Ratner is going to be joining the board from Forest City, and Margie Rowe from Moen has just joined us. They are helping us move this forward. I also have to thank Shore Bank Enterprise Group, because when I started out, the good people at the Gun Foundation said, don't start a nonprofit yet. Let's see how far this program's going to go. And Shore Bank said, we'll incubate you. So I have to say thanks to Paul Christensen, who's no longer in Cleveland, but still working for Shore Bank in Chicago. But Chris Warren has come along, has been helping us get started. So I have to thank the folks at Shore Bank. I have to thank the people at the Gun Foundation again, John Jensen in particular, because I started this with gathering people, and the group kept growing and growing, and finally John came up to me and said, Holly, I think you have something here. So he gave me my first grant, the $7,200 that got me started, and I have to thank him, and he's not here, he's on vacation, I believe. So I have to thank the good fortune and the good vision of John Jensen from the Gun Foundation. And then the Cleveland Foundation joined. And soon I had the 1525 and Lennon and Sherwick and Sears Sweatland and Mather and Abington and more. And our latest is GAR. And GAR is helping us move to Akron. E4S has a network hub in Cleveland, and we gather 150 people every month to talk about the opportunities and the possibilities in sustainability. Akron wants to get in on the gig, and so GAR is supporting us on that. I have to, of course, thank staff. The staff is a collaboration. And again, my background is economic development. Steph Strong joined us with her background in the environment. She worked at Earth Day Coalition. And Courtney Diorio joined us. Her background is in civic, in the social sector. So together, we bring together the social, entrepreneurial, and civic focus. And lastly, we've added to the staff Victoria Avi. She just started this year. So now that leads to strategic partners. Go by them very quickly here. The Cleveland Green Building Coalition and Green Energy Ohio, we work together to build awareness and do education. We put out the Solar Challenge, the first BHAG out in the industry. We're helping to start the solar thermal industry in Northeast Ohio right now. I want to thank those in the food sector, local food sector. That's the new Agrarian Center, the Cuyahoga Valley Countryside Conservancy. We come together every February, and we throw the biggest local food event you'll see at the Great Lakes Brewery. We get about 200 people there from all parts of the food industry coming together to say, how do we bring local food to Northeast Ohio? That will create jobs in all levels of society. We work with the Cuyahoga County Planning Commission. We work with them and RMI and Main Gate on something called Waste Equals Revenue Roundtable in the Cuyahoga River Valley with the biggest industrial polluters. Well, they're not polluters anymore, should I say. We're turning their pollution into revenue streams and looking for that opportunity. We're working with the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District and the Cleveland Institute of Art to design products out of resource recycle materials. We're working with EcoCity Cleveland and the City of Cleveland to help change the way the City of Cleveland does good business. Collaboration is how we implement sustainability in Northeast Ohio, and it's how we do our work. We have something called an SI group, where we train people, peer groups, how to implement sustainability within your organization. The Cleveland Foundation just graduated from our program. They learned how to save money through waste reduction and energy efficiency, through working through E4S's 8-month program. The Gun Foundation has just joined us. So we're attracting all sorts of people, all sorts of groups that I never expected to come to learn how to implement sustainability. So together, we're discovering the possibilities for our future in Northeast Ohio. And again, there's thousands of us out here, so if you've never heard about sustainability, just turn to your neighbor, because most likely they've heard about it. And join us on a third Tuesday event at the Great Lakes Brewery, have some fun, and learn about the opportunities for your business to save money and find new revenue streams and create a healthier environment for Northeast Ohio. Thank you.
Well, all I can say is, wow. Please join me in one more round of applause for both of our award winners. There are many who could not be here today and many who sent congratulations to our winners. Those include Congressman Dennis Kucinich, who has proclamations for both organizations. I'd like to thank all of you for being here to celebrate the achievements, the growth, and the potential of our sector, the nonprofit sector, and look forward to seeing you all next year. Thank you very much.